Welcome to this explainer on George Orwell's masterpiece 1984. Today, we're doing a deep dive. We're going to comprehensively discuss each and every key point of Winston Smith's psychological and physical destruction. We aren't just summarizing the plot here, we're dissecting the anatomy of how a totalitarian regime systematically dismantles a human soul. So, if you've ever wondered exactly how total power operates on the mind and why it's still so terrifyingly relevant today, you are absolutely in the right place.
Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap. We're going to cover Welcome to Oceania, The Spark of Rebellion, Love and the Brotherhood, Inside the Ministry of Love, and finally, The Ultimate Surrender.
Let's kick things off with Part 1, Welcome to Oceania. So we start out in Airstrip 1. It's a decaying, ramshackle world that used to be London. And the ruling party here exercises absolutely terrifying control, both physical and psychological, over literally every aspect of life. Consider how their outlandishly dishonest nature is baked right into the government itself through 4 contradictory ministries. The Ministry of Truth? Well, they alter history. The Ministry of Peace wages perpetual war. The Ministry of Plenty plans economic starvation. And the dreaded Ministry of Love? Yeah, that's the epicenter of torture. The net effect of all this is a complete, bewildering breakdown of independent thought. You don't just obey the party, you literally lose the ability to even conceptualize anything outside of it. But, the control doesn't stop at the government level. Think about the concept of thought crime. In a world with zero freedom, your own nervous system and private thoughts actually become your deadliest enemies. Seriously, a simple facial twitch, a tiny moment of hesitation, or even muttering in your sleep can get you completely erased from existence. Vaporized. The party's absolute omniscience means citizens are trapped in this constant, exhausting war against their own minds and bodies, just trying to survive the day. Imagine the sheer psychological toll of monitoring every single breath you take, knowing one stray thought is a literal death sentence. Now, you might be wondering who can possibly fight back against this? Well, to put that into perspective, a massive 85% of Oceania's population are proles. These are the impoverished masses who genuinely possess the sheer physical numbers to overthrow the whole system in a single afternoon. But tragically, the party intentionally keeps them completely uneducated and distracted. They lead brutish lives and are totally unaware of their own oppression. Actually, the party doesn't even bother to strictly monitor them, because without intellectual awareness, rebellion is just impossible. And this leaves minor party members, like Winston, feeling utterly isolated in their desire for genuine freedom. He's basically trapped in a sea of people who can't even see their own chains. Moving right along to Section 2, The Spark of Rebellion. Winston knows he's essentially a dead man walking, but he just can't suppress his deeply human urge to rebel. We can trace his shift from quiet misery to active, tangible defiance right here. It kicks off in April 1984 when he takes a massive risk and buys a secret diary. Just owning this thing is a severe crime. Then, later that evening, in this blind panic of clarity, he commits his very first overt act of rebellion by frantically writing "Down with Big Brother" over and over again. And weeks later, this obsession with a suppressed past drives him to Mr. Sherrington's antique shop down in the Prole district. He's desperately reaching out for some physical connection to a history that hasn't been corrupted by the state. He's looking for proof, any proof at all, that the world wasn't always this dark. But trying to understand the past is almost impossible because of the party's most insidious weapon: doublethink. As a worker whose literal job is altering historical records, Winston wrestles with this psychological trap every single day. Imagine being forced to know a fact, intentionally erase it from your own memory, and then genuinely believe the new lie you've just been told. It forces citizens to outright deny the evidence of their very own eyes and ears. Winston struggles constantly under the crushing weight of this machinery, desperately yearning for the simple right to trust his own memory. It's not just about lying, right? It's about completely destroying the concept of objective reality so the party becomes the one and only source of truth. All right, on to Section 3, Love and the Brotherhood. Suddenly, the pacing of the narrative really starts to accelerate. Winston's solitary rebellion actually blossoms into a shared, passionate secret when a coworker named Julia passes him a note that simply says, "I love you." But what's really interesting here is the striking contrast between these two. Winston is fatalistic, he's obsessed with historical truth, and he wants this grand, abstract revolution. He's thinking in terms of generations. Julia, on the other hand, she just wants to outwit the party and enjoy herself in the present. She uses her body and her sexuality as a practical, life-affirming tool of rebellion against a regime that says sex is only a sterile duty to the state.
So together, they form this powerful, albeit temporary alliance, finding the human connection the party tries so desperately to obliterate. The couple quickly builds a fragile, doomed sanctuary. They create this illusion of safety by renting an unmonitored room above Mr. Charrington's shop so they can carry out their affair. It's a tiny pocket of freedom in a world of absolute surveillance. But even more dangerously, they naively trust O'Brien, an inner-party member who hands them a copy of Emmanuel Goldstein's Forbidden Manifesto. For a brief, really intoxicating moment, Winston feels like he's finally part of the legendary underground resistance, the Brotherhood. He's reading the truth, he's holding the woman he loves, and he's feeling this massive, dangerous surge of hope.
But man, that hope is violently extinguished. Winston and Julia are looking out their window, feeling the immense weight of their inevitable doom, and they whisper to each other, "We are the dead." And then, out of the shadows, an icy third voice echoes back, "You are the dead." A hidden telescreen abruptly reveals that the kindly old Mr. Charrington was an agent of the Thought Police all along. In a single, terrifying instant, their sanctuary is breached, and their rebellion is completely, utterly shattered.
Which brings us to Section 4, Inside the Ministry of Love. We slow down our descent now to enter the terrifying reality of Winston's imprisonment. This is where O'Brien is unmasked, not as a savior from the Brotherhood, but as a ruthless, calculating interrogator for the party. And the party's methodology here is terrifyingly precise. They don't just want to execute their enemies. Honestly, killing a rebel just creates a martyr for others to rally behind. Instead, they follow a precise three-step method. First, they break the body through extreme, unbearable physical pain to override human reason. Next, they methodically destroy independent logic, memory, and loyalty. And finally, they completely reshape the mind, forcing the prisoner to genuinely love Big Brother before they finally put a bullet in their brain. They want your soul, not just your obedience. During this whole grueling process, O'Brien reveals a chilling truth that separates the party from basically any other dictatorship in human history. Winston kind of speculates that the party rules people for their own good, right? Thinking they must have some grand, noble goal. Well, O'Brien literally tortures him for that naive answer. The crucial point O'Brien makes is that the regime doesn't control people for wealth, luxury, or some utopian ideology. They do it purely for the agonizing ecstasy of exerting ultimate power over the human mind. Making someone suffer is exactly how they prove they have power. Like O'Brien says, power is not a means to an end. Power is the end itself. So after weeks of having his body and logic mercilessly broken, his teeth are literally falling out, he's just a skeletal shell, Winston still bravely clings to one final, untainted thread of his humanity, his love for Julia. He hasn't betrayed her in his heart. But when Winston proudly declares he still hates Big Brother, O'Brien realizes there's only one step left. He sends him to the one place everyone in Oceania fears above all else. And it brings us face to face with this infamous, terrifying question: what is in Room 101? And that leads us into our final section, the ultimate surrender. This is where we witness the absolute, devastating destruction of Winston's humanity. Room 101 doesn't just hold some generic torture device. No, it contains the worst thing in the world. It's a punishment perfectly and uniquely tailored to the individual's deepest, most unexplainable subconscious phobias. The party basically reads you completely to find the one thing you absolutely cannot withstand. For Winston, O'Brien weaponizes a profound childhood nightmare, a cage of writhing, starving rats designed to be strapped directly onto his face. It bypasses logic entirely and attacks the primal fear center of his brain. Faced with this primal, inescapable physical terror, Winston's nervous system just completely takes over. He instinctively lunges for self-preservation, screaming, "Do it to Julia, not me, Julia, I don't care what you do to her." In this single, agonizing moment, he permanently destroys his own humanity. By begging O'Brien to torture the woman he loves instead of him, it isn't just a physical betrayal, it's an irreversible shattering of his spirit. Once he realizes he's entirely a prisoner of his own body's fear, his ability to love, think, or rebel is gone forever. The party finally found his breaking point. And this brings us to the ultimate surrender of his intellect. Once a champion for the objective truth, a guy who famously wrote in his diary that freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 = 4, a completely hollowed-out Winston now traces this false equation, 2 + 2 = 5, in the dust at a cafe. He has fully accepted the party's warped reality. He doesn't just pretend to believe it. He truly believes it.
He's finally learned to practice doublethink flawlessly against his own mind, completely erasing his capacity for reason. So our explainer concludes right here at the Chestnut Tree Cafe. Winston is completely broken. He's drinking victory gin, crying tears of joy over a military victory, and possessing a profound, genuine love for Big Brother. The psychological and physical destruction is absolute. The party didn't just break his body, they reformatted his soul. And so we're left to wonder, what happens when a totalitarian regime has the power to make you enthusiastically betray your own heart? And can true freedom ever exist if our own nervous systems can be so absolutely conquered? Thank you so much for exploring this with us, and keep questioning.